Ha! Okay, here we go. Right, let's have a look, see what we've got. Better. Okay, so it's been a while since I've done one of these. Obviously, I still haven't got a working laptop, so I'm doing it off my phone, so we'll have to see how this goes. But there's a lot going on in the world of sport right now. And it is interesting, what is going on. I mean, especially the cricket corruption scandal that keeps coming out, and Al Jazeera have come out and released their second part of their documentary, and they claim they have evidence that Australians, English, Pakistani, Sri Lankans, you name it, every test nation's pretty much got apparently a player or players who are fixing games. Also, there's allegations against former Sri Lankan and Pakistani players of match fixes in years past, and cricket is a sport that has a problem. It has a problem in the fact that allegations like this seem to crop up every year or so. Every couple of years there's allegations of match fixing and spot fixing and bribery and corruption within the sport, and I don't know how much longer cricket can seemingly ignore these issues, and if the anti-corruption unit from the ICC seems to be not doing its job well enough, because more and more of these allegations are coming out. Now, from what I gather, the Al Jazeera one may be slightly politically motivated, and with that, the first allegations came out much earlier in the year and did a video on it, and now more allegations have come out, but yet none of the players have been named. This is what's really, really interesting. They name the supposed fixer from India, they don't name any of the players. So, although what is interesting is the media outlets that are following this story do have the names of the players that are alleged to have taken bribes to fix matches, or are alleged to be involved in a match fix, but they won't release the names for legal reasons. So that says to me one of two things. One, they're not taking these allegations seriously, and they're saying, okay, this is possibly made up. Or two, there's ongoing legal stuff whereby charges will possibly be brought at a later date, and therefore naming and shaming publicly may hinder the legal process. That's the only two options I can think of, is they're not serious allegations, or they are serious allegations. But they're not going away, and that's the problem. These allegations in cricket aren't going away, and that's an issue for the sport, and the sport, isn't coping very well, because every year more and more of these allegations come out. And it's very interesting that England are now playing Sri Lanka, as an ex-Sri Lankan player, Jai Surya, has been accused of match fixing. And these allegations just don't go away. On another side, obviously, Freddie Flintoff is now being named as a new Top Gear host, and that raises a point. How are things? Well, this morning I had a physio appointment, and it turns out my shoulder's a little bit more damaged than we thought, and there's a nerve issue, and there's issues with an inflamed nerve or something, and it's more serious than I originally thought. And I've got another appointment in 2 weeks' time, and I've got to take some anti-inflammatory painkillers, something like that. It's not going great. On the Newcastle front, yes, when I did my Premier League predictions video, and I said these would be the 3 teams that are going down, I stand by the 3 teams that are going down. Newcastle, definitely in a world of shit. I'm not holding any punches there. Newcastle are in serious trouble. Well, here's the thing. Mike Ashley obviously had this time last year. Amanda Staveley came in with her bid to buy, and for some reason that fizzled out, and it just fizzled out. It didn't collapse. It just I am doing physio, so the physio worked out there is a nerve issue and there could be further issues internally in the shoulder, but we have to go through each stage. It's a bit more serious than thought originally. On the Newcastle side of things, Mike Ashley put the club up for sale last year. There were other bids other than Amanda Staveley's. We don't know what Mike Ashley is really about. He's put the club up for sale before. No, feel free. I will find his Twitter. I'm on Twitter, but feel free to send the link in the at the end of the video. When the live stream's ended, send the link and I'll have a look and we'll see what happens. But Mike Ashley, I don't know how much longer Mike Ashley has. I've got a cold as well. You bear with me 1 second. I'll be back. Shit. And we're back. We're back. But no, the issue with Mike Ashley and the Newcastle is since he bought the club a decade ago, well, actually a little over a decade ago, they basically had a manager a season. That's pretty much the average that the club have had. They've gone through a lot of managers. Alan Pardew was the longest serving. They've had 2 relegations. And the issue is obviously you'll find me on Twitter as well. My Twitter account is exactly the same as the channel name, so feel free to find the Sports Boffin on Twitter. It's exactly the same as the channel name, and you can share the tweet with me, and then we can discuss it on Twitter as well as on the channel. But it is interesting. But in the amount of time that Mike Ashley's owned the club, the value of the club has decreased. When the club was first bought, they'd obviously been one of the wealthier clubs in English football, and people forget that they were the second biggest club financially in English football in the 90s and early noughties. Mike Ashley comes in, and the club is really decreased in value. Yes, I am going to the Bison game next Sunday, and you'll recognise me. I will be at the Bracknell Basingstoke game on Sunday, sorry, and I'm more than happy to have a debate. There's a lot of Basingstoke fans that are going to Bracknell Bees games as well at the moment with the ongoing issues with the Basingstoke team and their rink issues and their future being up in the air after this season. I see a lot of Basingstoke jerseys at Bracknell Bees games this year. And it will be an interesting game because the amount of players that have swapped teams, it's basically the Bracknell Bison versus the Basingstoke Bees, as we call it as a joke. A lot of ex-Bracknell players have gone one way and a lot of ex-Basingstoke players have come the other, including the coach. So it'll be really interesting to see the dynamic of that. And we'll have to see what happens. On the Mike Ashley side, yes, he has used Newcastle United shamelessly to market his company, Sports Direct, and the brands and the companies that they've bought out. He's used it shamelessly over the years. Fans have reacted angrily. The renaming of St James's Park to the Sports Direct Arena angered fans a lot. It doesn't help that he's a Tottenham fan by birth. Yes, growing up he was a Tottenham fan, so there is that to consider as well. Now, I don't normally vape, but I'm trying to quit smoking and I haven't had a cigarette in a week, so I'm vaping. But the issue with Newcastle is more deep-rooted. The amount of money that Mike Ashley's put in, or is not putting in, is crucial. A club of that size, with the fan base, and the location of the stadium within the city as well, it's in a very central location. The city's built around Newcastle, really. They're one of the most loyal fan bases you will find. I always agree with the Newcastle fan base on some of their behaviour off the field and some of the antics that Newcastle fans have done and hooligans have done. But I will say this: they are a passionate bunch, and it takes a lot to piss them off. And Mike actually done a lot of that. I think he has to sell. I cannot see Newcastle staying up with him owning it. There's a lack of investment in the transfer market. Rafa Benitez, there's question marks over his longevity. He has stuck with the programme, but he obviously wants to take the club to the next step. I think the fans want the club to go to the next step, but looking where they are, they have to win at least 2 of those next 5 games, because if Cardiff can get a win, and Huddersfield are looking a bit fighty, it could be difficult because Fulham have now slipped in. Huddersfield look like they've got a bit of fight about them, if only a lack of goal scoring quality, but they are making things difficult. Cardiff getting that win, it leaves Newcastle bottom of the table, and Newcastle have to get at least 2 wins out of the next 5 games. If not, Huddersfield, if they all Huddersfield do is got to nick a win, and then it is what it is. I can't see. The North East needs a success story in football, and unfortunately, they haven't got one. You got to look at the football in the North East, and you got to look at where the clubs are in the leagues they're in. Hartlepool have gone out the Football League. Yeah, they are one of the smaller clubs in English football, but they've gone out the Football League. Newcastle are struggling at the bottom of the Premier League. Sunderland bound League One. Hull are at the bottom of the Championship. Middlesbrough are probably one of the shining lights in North East football right now. And I'm saying that honestly. Scunthorpe United are the other team, and possibly Grimsby, if you want to class Grimsby as part of the North East as well. But that general region of footballing kind of hotbed, there are issues there. And a lot of it's down to bad ownership of clubs and poor investment. There is no 2 ways about it. There isn't. I don't know how long the situation can continue at Newcastle. I don't know how long Mike Ashley is going to own the club. If they get relegated, that means the value of the club decreases even more. So I was surprised last year when he didn't complete the deal. And even then he was asking too much. But they do risk becoming a yo-yo club. I haven't seen the FA Cup draw. Obviously it's the first round proper, so in that respect, the big boys don't enter the competition till the 3rd round. And it is what it is. I will have to have a look at the draw, what it actually means for the Football League clubs in League 1 and League 2 that are in the draw, and who is going to be the possible have a banana skin game against a lower league or non-league club. But I haven't seen the draw. I've actually been playing Assassin's Creed today when I got back in, so I haven't seen the draw. I haven't really given the FA Cup much of a thought, but yes, Bracknell Town Football Club has been going since 1896, and then you've got Bracknell Cavaliers. You've got a lot of football clubs around in the non-league. There's a very healthy non-league presence in this part of Berkshire, and Bracknell Town have been in the FA Cup first round proper. Admittedly, 20 years ago against Mansfield Town, but Bracknell Town has actually been FA Cup proper a long time ago, and at the end of the day, the town itself that I live in does have a very interesting sporting pedigree. The rugby club, Lewis Moody used to play there as a youth player when he was a junior. So there's a connection with an England international, which is important. And every year he comes and visits the club, and there's a signed jersey of his first England cap. His first jersey is in the clubhouse. So that's a little bit of tidbit of sporting legend, I suppose. Obviously, the ice hockey team have won the old Super League back in the day, and the Bracknell Bees, and were the best team in the country for a brief period of a couple of years. There is a lot to be said about this town, but yes, we do have several non-league clubs. Bracknell Bees, I think, by some margin. They've been professional. They've been on TV more than Bracknell Town. Yes, they are younger because ice hockey is obviously a more modern sport than football in its development and growth. The Bracknell Town Football Club have been going since 1896, mind. So they are historic. They are one of the oldest non-league teams in the country, and hopefully one day they can make it into the Football League or into the conference. Our next nearest club of a major size is Maidenhead United. They're in the conference right now. And my mate's pub is right by the football ground. So obviously the season's now on. And if you go down his pub on a Saturday, you'll see a lot of football fans going to and from the game. And we were at my mate's pub when Leyton Orient came to town last season in the first game of the season, which Leyton Orient did win. and there was a feisty atmosphere. There was some hooligan elements at that game, and they were riot police. So Maidenhead United have a club, Bracknell Town have a club. So there are some very strong non-league presence in this area. You've got Aldershot and Farnborough down the road. There is a strong non-league footballing presence in this part of the world, just west of London. You've got Woking. They've got a decent non-league club. Obviously, Aldershot have been in the Football League. Thank you very much. I will check that tweet out later this evening, and I'll happily look out. Yes, Wealdstone, Harrow Wealdstone, they have a club as well up in northwest London. They have some non-league football. On the Basingstoke side of things, I don't know enough about the town of Basingstoke and the sporting history of the town of Basingstoke, apart from the Bison. That is the only thing in Basingstoke that I have enough knowledge of on a sporting sense. Oh, I've got a cold, and this is just aggravating. That's it. So Basingstoke Bison, the issue with them is not the team. It's not the fans. It's where they play. And I think when it comes to the Basingstoke sports teams, they have been let down by where they play. The lack of investment in their playing facilities is shocking. But Basingstoke, Planet Ice own that ice rink. Also, they own Milton Keynes ice rink, and the MK Lightning have personnel issues. They are struggling to recruit and keep players. They only iced 13 players last night. So there is an issue with Milton Keynes and the Lightning being and the longevity in the Elite League. And the Elite League, obviously, my prediction on Bees Bison, that's going to be an interesting game because of the amount of players that have swapped teams. And Bracknell been going all the way to Peterborough and losing 5-4 at the weekend, and obviously losing an overtime against Swindon. I think Basingstoke are the weakest of the four ex-English Premier League ice hockey sides. Bracknell were the weakest last year. Basingstoke are the weakest this year. They have surprised me somewhat in how they played. I do think, though, that at some point the issues with the rink will take their toll. And I do think Bracknell have more quality and have more confidence. On saying that, a lot of the players do know each other very well, so it's going to be a very interesting encounter. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets very, very, very chippy. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of penalties, and discipline will be crucial. I think whoever is the most disciplined team will win the game. I think that is crucial. If especially Basingstoke, if they lose their discipline, they're done. They don't have their team isn't as strong, and with Waller Evans being injured and Metten being goal, if you can get under Metten's skin as a Bracknell fan, I should know, he tends to lose the plot and not have a good game. So I can see Metten being a weakness in his temperament, and so we'll see. We'll see what happens, but we've got 6 days until the game. There is a lot that could happen in that time. We could. It's definitely going to be an interesting battle. Southampton are struggling as well. So on that point, it could be a chance for Newcastle. It could be, but they're not scoring enough goals. They are losing tight games, so they're not being outplayed terribly, but they're not scoring, and that is a crucial thing. They're not getting the ball in the net for Newcastle. They're not getting the ball in the net. I would say this, when you say Newcastle's a bit too big a club to go down, they said that about Nottingham Forest, they said that about Blackburn, they've said it about a lot of clubs. They're too big to get relegated. And what happens? They get relegated. You're not going to win every game. I try and say this to every football fan, even these Man City fans when Man City were in the running for 4 titles. You're not going to win every game. You're going to drop points. You're going to struggle. West Brom are doing very well under Darren Moore. I think Darren Moore, as a manager, he was put in at the West Brom job too late. Had they put him in a month earlier, West Brom stay up in the Premier League last season. Darren Moore did a very, very good job with West Brom at the end of last season. He's done a very good job this season. He's got them playing. He's a club man. and I can see that being a very, very good appointment. Stoke, on the other hand, when they first got promoted, everyone thought they were going to be absolutely hammered. The last time when they were in the top flight, in the 80s, they were atrocious. And so therefore, everyone predicted Stoke were going to struggle. They stayed up for the better part of a decade. What undid Stoke was their poor use of the transfer market. And possibly an ageing squad. Lack of investment. And this is what's doing Newcastle. Leeds, yes, Leeds are a prime example of a club that were classed as too big to go down. But they were chronically mismanaged off the field. Chronically. On the field, really good until that last season in the Premier League. Off the field, chronically mismanaged, financial issues, and it's a difficult one with Leeds. Obviously, Blackburn beat them 2-1 at the weekend, which is it's a nice result as we're the promoted side. We're predicted to be in the bottom half of the table. We're doing quite well. Leeds had a really fiery start of the season. They really got off quick. But they have struggled late, only getting 9 points out of 24, I believe, available. So they are starting to slow down a bit. And there are some causes for concern, but again, for me, it's too early in the season to say this team is not going to get promoted or this team is going to get promoted or relegated. But Leeds have cooled off somewhat. Other teams around them are doing well. But yes, Leeds, if they were to get back to the Premier League, I don't know how strong they would be in the Premier League. That's the problem. I don't know if Leeds were to get back into the Premier League, if they would actually stay up. I really don't think. If they were to get back in the Premier League, they would be in the Premier League for very long. And I say that because a lot of teams become yo-yo clubs, like West Brom back in the day, and that what Newcastle could become is a yo-yo club. But it is what it is. I mean, I don't want to just talk about football. I know you're all football fans, and therefore there's a lot of interest in the sport. But there was other sports going on, other big sports stories. I started the live stream talking about the corruption scandal in cricket and Al Jazeera, the TV network, releasing the second part of their documentary into match fixing. And rugby as well is an interesting talking point this week. Danny Cipriani gets sent off, and I watched most of that game for Gloucester against Munster. I don't think that was a red card, and I do think they need to look at how the game is being refereed. But Cipriani, what about the new deal with Deza in boxing? Oh God, boxing. I haven't really been following boxing for a while now. I think the Floyd Mayweather Conor McGregor fight really put me off boxing in its entirety. I was planning to go back into training and do some sparring, and then my shoulder really is packed in. But we were going to try the injury out. But when McGregor and Mayweather signed up for that farcical fight, that's what it was. It was farcical. It put me off boxing completely. And now that Habib, the Russian, Habib, the Russian, I'm not even going to pronounce his surname. He's now come out and says he wants to fight McGregor, not McGregor, Mayweather. And Dana White, the president of UFC, has come out and said that he wants UFC to consider taking on a boxing promotion and becoming boxing promoters. I think this is becoming more of a circus than it needs to. I know that's his spelling name, but I cannot pronounce his name. This is interesting when fans want the owners out of clubs. The interesting thing when you look at when fans are unhappy with the ownership of a team, I look at the NHL. Okay, now the NHL is a franchise-based league, so the teams are franchised out, so the league owns all the teams, and then the owners come in and buy a franchise, much like a business. At the moment, there's a big protest against the ownership of the Ottawa Senators by Eugene Melnyk, and a lot of fans are going to games protesting with banners saying they want him out, they want him out, they want him out. And the NHL will be looking at this going, okay, and what? Fan protests can go so far. Sport now is so commercial, it's such a big business, there's so much money involved. I don't think an owner's going to be too worried about a couple of fans basically telling him to F off. Not really going to be concerned. I understand there is a big movement in the Newcastle fan base that are very anti-Ashley, and I completely understand it. I do think that when people like Alan Pardew come out, now Alan Pardew, I don't like the man, I've met the man, he's an arsehole. But when your manager, your longest serving manager that you've had since your ownership comes out and says your ownership is a Mickey Mouse show, when Alan Pardew was stating that Mike Ashley's ownership and transfer policy was a Mickey Mouse show, that says how badly the club is being run behind the scenes. That's the concern I have, is off the field, Newcastle are going to end up like Leeds. Because if they get relegated and he sells, he's going to start a massive loss. Businessmen want to make money. And Mike Ashley is a very controversial figure within British industry and within the footballing community. He's a very controversial figure. He's he's a lightning rod to a lot of fans, and it's a difficult one to really put a finger on and really go, right, okay. But the issue with Newcastle is there needs to be an owner who actually gives a toss about the fan base. Mike Ashley doesn't care about the fans. He's all about the money. And the reason why he spent the money in the Championship, because he realised, the Premiership's where the money's at. And this is where lower league clubs are complaining about the TV rights and the TV time that they get. And rightly so. Rightly so. A lot of lower league clubs are complaining about the TV sharing, the TV rights per league, and we shall see what happens. Honestly, I do think long term Mike Ashley will not be the owner. He's put the club up for sale several times. It won't be long before he sells. It just won't be this year. It will be soon, but I don't know when. If they stay up, he might sell. If he goes down, I don't know. I don't know how much more he's willing to invest in the club, and that's a concern. Someone asked for my opinion on Chelsea fans. There are some fan bases for the generalisation that I don't like, but I do have friends who are Chelsea fans. But there are fan bases that on a mainstream generalisation I don't like, and unfortunately Chelsea is one of them. But I have individual friends who are Chelsea fans individually, but as a group I can't stand Chelsea fans. But I'm very critical of a lot of clubs in a lot of ways that that they conduct themselves, and Chelsea's got a bad reputation for poor behaviour. Same as Celtic. I can't stand Celtic fans, even though I know some Celtic fans. I'm not a big fan of Celtic fans. Do I like Mourinho? The way Mourinho is acting, no, I don't like Mourinho. Yes, he's a very successful manager. Yes, he's got a lot of silverware. No, I don't like Mourinho. He does bring the game into disrepute constantly, and his antics or his reaction at the weekend, he used to do that to managers all the time, opposition players and managers all the time. He can dish it out, but he can't take it. Typical Billy. No, I'm not a big fan of Mourinho. I'm not sure who is. I don't know what else can be said about Mourinho, really. His battles with the media are well known now. I do think there is a slight witch hunt in the media after him, but he's not helping himself with some of his antics and some of his statements, and it doesn't help that his team don't play attractive, winning football. They win occasionally, but it's not attractive. My thoughts on Palace: I've got friends who are Palace fans. I think they will stay up. It was a bit of a pill to take against Everton, but Pickford said if that penalty goes in, I don't think Everton win the game. And yes, they do need to invest in one or two more attacking players. That's what the January transfer window is about. And yes, we when it comes to football fans, there's fans and then there's hooligans. And some clubs have more of a hooligan reputation than others. Celtic and Chelsea are well known for some of their interesting and vile chanting, as I call it. And it's always that minority that ruins it for a lot of people. And it's one of the reasons why I'm getting a bit bored with football, because you can go to a rugby union game or an ice hockey game, cricket. You can look at other leagues abroad. You don't get this kind of mentality for the most part. I say for the most part because there's always a minority that ruin it for everyone else. There's always a minority, and for some clubs it's a big minority. Rangers, Celtic, they're two clubs that really do have abhorrent fan bases, be it on sectarian lines or racist lines. The Rangers, I remember that because I was in a pub and I used to play in a poker league and they had the TV on. And I'm sat there, playing my poker league game, and it's on the TV, and the big screen failed at half time for some reason. I think it was ITV. They showed the riot basically, and Rangers fans were a disgrace that night. Absolute disgrace. When the big screen failed. I predicted, I think, Newcastle to finish 19th. I think I predicted them to finish 19th on my predictions. But I can always revisit that, and I can always look at, on 31st of December, I will relook at where teams are and where I had them finishing. I can always have a look at that. I still think Cardiff will be the worst team in the league. Yes, they got a win, but I can't see Cardiff staying up. Well, I can't actually remember my prediction video, but I had Palace around 12th. And I think around 12th, 13th, 14th, so somewhere in the mid-table, the lower end of mid-table. But I do think if Palace can go on a cup run, they can do some damage in the FA Cup. I really do think they have that about them this season. I think in one-off game, they could go to the FA Cup final and win it. I do think that they have a chance. That's their chance of getting some momentum, is doing well in the cup. It's depending on how seriously Roy Hodgson decides to take the competition, and if he can use that and motivate the Palace players on their league form. But we'll have to see. I think the bottom three I predicted was Huddersfield, possibly Fulham in there. I think it was Huddersfield and Fulham were fourth and third bottom. Newcastle and Cardiff, they're my bottom four. I will stand by that. Fulham have got a defence that's a sieve, and it is really, and that's. I think Fulham's underneath is their defence, not their style of play. Cardiff, they got that win, but they don't. I'm not convinced that they're gonna do much. Huddersfield have that bit of fight about them and that bit of passion. Whether they can get those enough home wins to get them out of trouble, I would say that's their home form is going to be crucial. But Newcastle, they just can't score, cannot score, and that says a lot. When John J. Shelby was in around, the England selection in for the World Cup and just missed out, and this season just isn't the same player. But Benitez has a struggle. We'll have to see what happens coming December 31st when the window opens for the transfers. If you want to have a look at ice hockey teams in Scotland, go on Premier Sports and Free Sports, and Free Sports will show games, and you can catch games. There's 3 Scottish teams now with Edinburgh going out of business. Got Fife, Dundee, and Glasgow. So there is a healthy, hockey scene in Scotland, and the Solway Sharks also play in the National League as well. So there's a fair bit of hockey in Scotland, and it's on Free Sports. You can catch it on Free Sports. They've got a 3-year TV package, which is really important. I might have to catch that Guildford game, then I might have to go down and catch a game. Not that I really want to go to the Spectrum because it's not the best ice rink in the world, but I might have to catch a game. I have been telling myself that I would, at some point, go to a Milton Keynes Guildford game in the Elite League. It's feasible, and they are reasonably local to where I am. It's just the logistics of getting there. But I'm more than happy to catch an Elite League game. But at the same time, the Steelers. Yes, the Steelers. Yeah, the Sheffield Steelers are having an interesting season. But they are a hotbed of English ice hockey. Benteke hasn't been performing this season, and Andros Townsend, has he already peaked? Wilfried Zaha is a brilliant player, I think. His spell at Man United, didn't work out, but Palace is his club, and I think he will spend a long time there. But yeah, check out Free Sports if you want to catch any British ice hockey in the Elite League. It's on there. I think there's a game every 2 weeks. They're starting off the package small and slowly growing it. And there you go. I think Benteke is not performing well. I think Townsend has peaked and has passed his best. I do honestly believe Andros Townsend is a good player, but I do think he developed really quickly and then he sort of plateaued out and hasn't really kicked on to that next level. Wilfried Zaha, though, is a class player. And that's where England screwed up, because they could have had him in the England setup, and he's chosen to go with his family heritage and go down that route. But I do think that this is the problem with English football, is there's a lot of young players that have chosen other nations in the last decade or so who could have played for England. And whether they would have helped us in the World Cup or not is another thing. I think with Southgate signing that extension, I think that is a good thing. I think that win in Spain will also help the players and the growth of the team and the squad. But whether we can keep developing these young players and give them game time. This is the issue with the Premier League and the Championship, is not enough of these English players are getting game time. And there are a host of other young players who may have dual citizenship who could play for England, but they then go down another route. No, I don't think the Elite League would work with the promotion relegation. We've worked that out with the National League as well, the promotion relegation, because it costs more in the Elite League than the National League. A lot of teams are struggling. Look at Milton Keynes this season. They are struggling to recruit and retain players. And they did go up a level. They were invited to go up a level. They applied to go up a level. And it's the cost of the sport. Ice hockey, unlike football or rugby, it's the cost of the equipment and the training and the amount of effort and money you've got to put in as a player to get to a reasonable level. Oh, fucking hell. Fucking cold. But no, I don't think an Elite League promotion relegation system would work. I think, yes, the league does need to expand and look at more, around the south of England. I think because there's a north-centric kind of hotbed of the league, they need to look at adding possibly Peterborough and Bracknell. I think would be good fits, and Hull as well to the Elite League. I think that would be good fits, and that makes it an even balanced league. I don't actually know how much it costs to maintain an ice sheet. I really don't. The Sheffield Steelers, their arena is multi-purpose. I think Nottingham's arena is possibly multi-purpose. I honestly could not tell you how much it costs to maintain an ice sheet. I really couldn't. It is expensive. It's not cheap. But I couldn't honestly tell you how much it is to maintain that kind of ice surface. I really couldn't. it will vary from location to location and the age of a building as well. Some buildings are easier to maintain than others. I think an age of the machinery has something to do with it, because at Swindon the other day, their ice failed, their compressor failed, so that happens a fair bit, and it's happened a fair bit in recent years with various teams. I could not tell you the cost of maintaining an ice surface. I really couldn't, and you know, it is what it is. But I couldn't honestly tell you. I'm not up to date with that kind of side of the game. But that's where it is expensive. Ice maintenance costs do take a lot out of a team's budget, or a rental, because a lot of teams do rent the rink they're in from an owner. It actually works out cheaper that way, rather than a team owning a rink. Renting ice time is cheaper, but there is a lot of costs incurred. It is a very expensive sport to play and to maintain the facilities. I think that's possibly what's holding British ice hockey back, is the lack of money in the sport. There is more money now than what there was 10 years ago, but there is still a lack of finances. I did look at some of the Roland Garros games this year. I did watch some of them. I didn't catch as much as I would want to, because at the time I was working on a farm as a labourer, but the bits and pieces I could catch, I did catch. What I find about Roland Garros is, obviously it's a clay surface, Wimbledon's grass. They're the two surfaces that are the most different. The hard courts are Australia and America, but Wimbledon being grass and Roland Garros being clay, they are really the most testing surfaces of the lot. The way the ball reacts when it bounces, the pace of the serve, the fatigue level that it puts upon the tennis players. It is an interesting dynamic. We've obviously seen the weather having a big effect on tennis, and I am surprised that they haven't all gone for the undercover main centre courts having roofs. I know Wimbledon has, I know Roland Garros are planning this. I wouldn't say tennis is so long. I think the issue with tennis is it's an individualistic sport, so there's no guaranteed salary for players. So if you're at the lower echelons of the sport, you're not making a lot of money. If you make it to the higher levels of the sport, then yes, you are making money. If you're at the lower levels, you're not making a lot. You rely more on sponsorship. But it's subjective. Not everyone's going to enjoy tennis. Not everyone. I don't enjoy playing it. I enjoy watching it. It can be really entertaining, but at the same time, I understand why some people don't enjoy it as much. I really do. But every viewpoint is subjective. Honestly, every viewpoint is subjective. So I'm not discrediting what you say that you find it boring. But that's tennis has got to find a way where it can, rather than just having casual fans who dip in for the French Open and Wimbledon and just watch Andy Murray or Rafa Nadal, for example, that they actually, get involved more. I have friends who do the equestrian events, like 3-day eventing, like badminton, horse trials. I'm not. Again, that's an expensive sport to get into, much like ice hockey. Very expensive sport. You've got to supply a horse for starters, horse riding lessons, all that. But again, it is subjective. It really is subjective when it comes to sports people like and don't like. And there is something else I want to get onto, a sport I don't mind watching, but I'm not a massive fan of, and that's the NFL, American football. I'm a casual fan. I like to see Green Bay do well. I caught the end of the Tennessee game against the LA Chargers last night, the last quarter, and it came down to the final point, and I think Tennessee made a mistake by going for the 2-pointer rather than the field goal and go for overtime. But look at that Wembley pitch. That is the second game that has been played on that pitch. There are 3 NFL games in a row taking place at Wembley. That pitch looks absolutely trashed. Absolutely trashed. And obviously the sale of Wembley collapsing this past week. There were rumours that the Jacksonville Jaguars would have a lot of their games moved to Wembley, but that pitch I don't think could survive more than a couple of games a season. It is in a terrible state. And what is also interesting is when the Oakland Raiders played, they only had one full day to get over the jet lag and to train before they played on the Sunday the other day. So NFL in London, I'm going to do a video on this probably tomorrow. I'm going to try, hopefully my iPad works. My view on the NFL in London, when it first happened, when they first brought a game here, it was a spectacle. It was okay. This is a one-off event. They decided to keep coming back and adding more games to the program. It's not as fun now. I think the NFL made a lot of money out of it, but when there is no hope of having a team here, says something. The fact that NFL Europe collapsed says there is an issue with getting people wanting to play the game, not watch it, play it. And I don't think moving Jacksonville would be the best team to move either. They've got a very small fan base. They're not a very successful team. And to try and grow a fan base, you need success, and Jacksonville, I don't think, is the team to do that. Oh no, I do watch the Super Bowl. I haven't missed a Super Bowl in the better part of a decade and a half. But I will say this about the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL does decide to put the Super Bowl in Wembley one year. I really wouldn't be surprised if they say we're going to have a Super Bowl in London one year. That'd be prime time viewing for Americans on Super Bowl Sunday. They would get a bigger TV audience. I would not be surprised if one day they do put the Super Bowl in London within the next 5 years. And it'll be at prime TV time for a British audience as well. Would I go though? Now, my friend Ollie goes to every single London game. He goes to every London Series game that there's been. He hasn't missed one yet, and he's spent a lot of money doing it. He is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Yes, they have played at Wembley. There was one year he went dressed as a penguin and got on Sky News. He goes every year. He goes every year. Now, I think he goes because it is an NFL game, not because he wants a team here. I don't think the pitch is of a high enough quality to not only have NFL but have football and occasionally rugby union and rugby league on it. I think it would destroy that pitch and it would have to be relayed a couple of times a year, and that's just an expensive solution. I do think there are issues with the Wembley Stadium. It's a pretty soulless stadium, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty soulless stadium. The Super League Grand Final, obviously it's played at Old Trafford. The Challenge Cup Grand Final is played at Wembley, and this year Catalan, because of the travel issues and trying to get all the French fans up from Perpignan, it was a soulless, half-empty stadium, and it was a shambles. The fact that the Super League, the Challenge Cup, and Rugby League, the Rugby League structure in Europe has decided to keep finals there until 2027, that is an issue. And as we've seen with the proposed sale of Wembley collapsing, we now know why. Wembley is going to be that white elephant for years to come. Over budget, soulless. They try to flog it for half price. I don't know, if we actually need a national stadium. It's in a really bad part of London. They haven't improved the infrastructure around the Wembley area enough. It's not the Wembley that we remember as youngsters with the two towers. They didn't keep them, which I think is a joke. I think they could have kept the original two towers of Wembley and incorporated them into the new stadium. But it's just not. It's not the best stadium in the world. It is pretty soulless. Like most modern stadiums, pretty soulless. And I can see Tottenham finishing out the season now. I can't see White Hart Lane being done before the end of the season. I really can't. And that's something else that hasn't really been mentioned lately is the struggles with White Hart Lane. There are all sorts of issues with that, the White Hart Lane build. That's getting expensive. I don't know. I don't know how long that scandal will go for. The Toronto Wolfpack, they missed out by 2 points, but that £1 million game was not worth £1 million. It was a poor quality game. But I do think, yes, they can. They can. Now, whether they can be a successful Super League side in years to come, if they get to that point, we shall see. But London Broncos getting back in, I think, is also important. I think the Super League and Rugby League needs to look at the south of England. I think it's an overlooked part of the country when it comes to the sport. It's an untapped resource in a sense. There's a lot of money in the south of England. There's a lot of potential fans in the south of England. And we have 2 professional sides in the south of England, the Scholars and the Broncos, both in London. The issue is the Rugby League needs to get possibly more Rugby League clubs in the south of England. They need to grow the game in a non-traditional market, much like they've done it in Canada. They've shown they're willing in Canada. Why can't they do it here? And the Broncos have proven you can develop local talent and get them in your side. The Broncos have proven that. 8 of their players are from the London area. So I'm really surprised that Rugby League in this country hasn't tried to take it to Rugby Union in that sense, because their seasons don't clash anymore as much, because League is predominantly a summer game now and Union is predominantly a winter game. There's a bit of overlap at the beginning of the Super League and end of the Super League season with Rugby Union, but for the most part you've got an untapped fan base, and depth level is just not there. But on the other question, can the Toronto Wolfpack grow the game in Canada? Yes, there are plans to have more teams on the east coast of the US and Canada within the next few years. Would it be better off if they had their own league? Possibly. But again, we've got to see what happens going forward. But look at Rugby Union with Major League Rugby. They've had a successful first season as well. So, they're both codes in North America are growing again. The US qualifying early on for the Rugby Union World Cup as well, I think, has helped. Canada, I've had some struggles in Rugby Union, but I do think it can grow the game. The Toronto Wolfpack do have a Canadian player. There is obviously a chance to get more people interested. And you've got to look at American football and Canadian football combos. You've gone into Rugby Union and vice versa. There is a good, strong link between American and Canadian football and Rugby League and Union. You can convert players and vice versa. Jordan Malitia going into the NFL as a linebacker, and you've had players go the other way. So there is a chance to it's bloody cold still went up to grow the game, and it has to be done right. The fans in Toronto are brought in. It's a sports mad city. It's a massive sports market, and of course, this is the only team in a promotion relegation system in the Toronto Wolfpack. All the other teams in North America do not have that kind of system, so that's interesting as well. But the local fans have bought in. They've bought in. So if you can get fans on board, those kids will who watch the game will want to pick up a rugby league ball and play. So there is an opportunity, a big opportunity to grow the game. We'll have to see what happens long term with that, but I can see it if they do it right, yes. But at the same time, London Broncos getting back in the Super League is really important as well for the future of the game. Rugby League needs to get out of the north of England and get off its traditionalist place, because it's lagging behind massively. It needs to modernise quickly. It's the same with the NRL. They need to expand outside of the east coast of Australia. They need to look at Perth. They need to look at Adelaide. They need to, strike west. Super League needs to strike south. And that's the only way the sport is going to be more of a global sport and grow and compete with rugby union and compete with football and gain fans and get players playing and grow the player base and grow the fan base is to expand. Plain and simple. plain and simple. But we'll have to see what happens long term. We have to see if they decide to go down that route. But it is what it is. On a rugby point, obviously Cipriani getting sent off, and the change in the rules when it comes to shots to the head and high tackles. I don't think that was a red card or worthy of it. I understand why it was given, but I think they have to look at the rugby union laws and how they're enforced as well. I think otherwise it makes a career of the sport. And LA Rams. I caught a bit of the Chargers Titans game yesterday. I think the Rams. I haven't followed enough of the NFL this season, but if you're 7-0, you're getting into the playoffs. You're going to make a run for the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be surprised if they're one of the, outside bets for the Super Bowl. We'll have to see what happens going forward, but there are some other teams playing right now. Kansas City Chiefs, they're looking pretty gnarly at the moment. They can just outscore everyone, but defense is their weakness. The Rams, they have a chance. They do. But I say this at the beginning of every season. Now we're about a quarter way through, halfway through. A record like that, yes, that's some good form. That is some good form. That's some positive form going forward into November. If they can keep that kind of run up and keep that form going, they can have a very good shot of winning the Super Bowl and going far in the Super Bowl or in the Super Bowl playoffs at least. And now that LA have got two teams again, that I think adds a bit of flavour, a bit of competitiveness down in California. I think that's some positive rivalry. And LA is a massive sports market. We've seen with the expansion with the Los Angeles FC into the MLS how positive that's been. For the MLS, we've seen obviously Wayne Rooney's introduction to the MLS, how positive he's been for DC United, and they've suddenly gone from the worst team in the league to being in the playoffs. So the MLS is an interesting league. It's an interesting where it's at. And what I find interesting is obviously take a game to the US once a year, every year for 15 years. The players aren't still on board. We're yet to see what happens. Obviously, Barcelona and Girona have obviously applied for permission to play a game in January, I believe. So we've got a couple of months. Already the players are against this. The players' unions against this. Fans groups are against it. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll have to see what happens with the MLS and the LA Rams in the NFL. They have had a very good start of the season. They've had a very solid start of the season. 7-0 record is nothing to be sniffed at. If they can keep up that kind of form and go in maybe losing one or two games, they can definitely go in with a really, really scary record. But as I say, anything to do with the playoff knockout structure is like completely different to a regular league season. So that'll be interesting to see, if they can carry that on into the postseason. But I haven't followed the NFL enough this year to really pass comment. But a record like that's pretty solid and pretty scary. But postseason play is completely different to regular season. So we'll have to see if they can continue that into the new year and into January and into February, and then we'll see when it comes to the Super Bowl weekend if they're there. And if they do make it to the Super Bowl, then there you go. So where do I think Bracknell will finish? Bracknell Bears, I don't know. Two very close. I mean, Swindon, Peterborough, and Bracknell are all very, very close. Streatham have beaten Bracknell and Swindon this season. I think Peterborough dropped some points as well. I think it's going to be close. I don't know. These are your top three teams. In what order, I don't know. We'll have a better idea, I'd say, the end of November, middle of December, where teams will finish. Traditionally, Bracknell always have a wobble in the middle of the season. It's a known fact of being a Bees fan. I think it's a difficult one. I'm not one for predicting. Even though I have done a Premier League football prediction, I'm not one for trying to predict results or league finishing position, because as last year and all sports proved, that was the most unpredictable 12 to 18 months in sport I think I've ever seen. The NHL taught me that. With Vegas getting to the Stanley Cup final, predicting was just, I gave up with trying to predict. I do think though that the way we have played this year, we look a lot better. We're winning games that a year ago we would lose. We're getting games closer that a year ago we would have been further away. I'm not really an NBA fan, I'm not going to lie. I've done a few videos on the NBA, I've done a bit of research into it, but basketball is not really one of my more favourite sports. I'm more of a casual viewer. I don't really in-depth follow the sport. I don't really follow a team. It's just not a sport that I really got into playing or watching. I will watch a game, but more as a casual passing through. I mean, I'll watch most sports at least once. The NBA though is a league that is working a salary cap system really well. Ryan Sutton. My opinion on him. I haven't really formed the basis of an opinion on a player yet. I haven't. Because the body of work that I've seen is very limited. I can't really form an opinion on a very limited sample size. Decent. Not that there is. I'm not gonna lie, but I can't really, as I say, make an informed opinion on a very small sample size. That makes, it's difficult. I think what we've, what I see on a regular basis is, as a Battle Bees fan, is definitely a lot of improvement in the players that were there from last year, and the new players that have been brought in are playing very, very well. However, I think the league this year is going to be a lot closer than last year. I think it's going to be more competitive than last year. I don't know what Saturday before the Guildford game that he went to. Fair enough. I don't have enough. We lost to the Bucks last night. Again, I'm not an NBA fan. I'm not gonna lie. I don't watch enough NBA to really form an opinion, as I said about other players and other sports. However, I did do a bit of research on the NBA. Did a bit of research on the NBA earlier in the year, and I looked at the salary cap, the growth, the wages of the players. They're the highest paid athletes in professional sports. If the Memphis Grizzlies are worth $1 billion, that says to me that the league is making money. If all the teams are making money, it's a healthy league. They've worked a salary cap system very, very well. And the way that the NBA has grown and has consolidated, yes, there are some downsides to the NBA, but you've got to look at the fact that they're the highest paid athletes, and all the teams make money. Even the bad ones, even the Memphis Grizzlies and the Phoenix Suns, every team is making money. They've been really, really smart in where they've located the franchises. For the most part, they've chosen sports-mad locations that have a strong collegiate system or other pro sports teams in major leagues and minor leagues. So they've chosen their locations well, and they finally set up a second tier. So there is a development tier now, like an affiliate tier, an NBA 2, if you will. The Utah Jazz is one of the locations I was a bit surprised about. But then again, you've got the Denver Nuggets in Colorado, so that makes a bit more logical sense to place a team in Utah. But Utah is not known as the most sporty US state, but it's much like the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL. They realised there was an untapped market in Salt Lake City, and they also worked out that Salt Lake City had an Olympic Games, so there is they realised there was an untapped sporting fan base there, and a resource that could be used. But it's interesting. I'm surprised the NHL hasn't gone to Salt Lake City. There just doesn't seem to be any interest from the NHL to go to Salt Lake. The Miami Heat. Now, this is an interesting one. Now, teams in Miami regularly fail to sell out, and I find this surprising. With the Dolphins, the Florida Panthers, the Miami Heat, you've got a lot of pro sports teams in Florida. Florida is full of pro sports teams. You've got to look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tampa Bay Lightning, Jacksonville Jaguars, Miami Heat. You've got a multitude of teams in Florida. It's a wealthier state than what it was 20, 30 years ago. There's a lot of wealthy people have moved to Florida. You've got a lot of expats in Florida. You've got a big Latino community. You've got a very big Afro-Caribbean community. A big retiree community. So they've got money. And a lot of them would have played or watched sports as fans in their youth or in younger days, or where they were originally from. Yet Miami as a city, now that's not including Tampa and Jacksonville and the other cities in Florida that professional sports teams, Orlando as well. But Miami regularly struggles in all its fan bases, for all its teams, to pack out its arenas. And could it be, the NHL, the Florida Panthers play at Sunrise, which is in the edge of the Everglades and a poor location. They should play in downtown Miami. The Miami Dolphins, I think, are the best supported, but even then, there's empty seats at Dolphins games. It doesn't always sell out. There's not consecutive sellouts for Dolphins games, which is a shame because they are a brilliant team. But the Miami Heat, I don't know. It's a complicated one, but Miami as a sports city regularly has problems in selling out for its sporting events. And that is really interesting. For Miami as a city, for some reason, doesn't always sell out games. And now with David Beckham bringing his football franchise to Miami as well in the next year or so, it'll be interesting to see if buy in, if they do buy into the MLS. Yes, I do have Xbox. I have Xbox Live, and I will, after the end of this live stream, happily send you my gamer tag. So in the comment section, just place a question at the end of the video. The video is uploading. Put a comment in the comment section, and I'll give you my gamer tag. I'm doing this off my phone, so I'm not going to attempt to try and type a comment. I don't think I can off a live stream on my phone, which is really frustrating. But I will get back to you on that. But yes, I do have Xbox Live. On relation to the NBA, it is interesting that it's one of the few sports with a salary cap where all the teams are bought in, the players are bought in, and there's no issues between a collective bargaining agreement or players known as being at loggerheads over money. The NHL is on the cusp of another lockout. The NRL in Australia, the Rugby League, the collective bargaining agreement is up soon, and there could be player strife there. Major League Baseball's had a player strike. So it's interesting that the NBA is, for the most part, kept the team owners and the players pretty much on board. Houston Rockets, and this is interesting because the Rockets owner wants to bring an NHL team to Houston. Obviously Seattle have been granted, for the most, 99% of the way there with Seattle. The Houston Rockets owner wants to bring an NHL team to Houston. Whether he calls them the Arrows or something else. He is interested in expanding in Houston. Now the NHL had meetings with him, and they would decide to go down the Seattle route for whatever reason. Although the final vote's in December, but we're pretty much guaranteed to have a Seattle team within the next couple of years in the NHL. So it's interesting. Whether, Houston is a sports-mad city. It's an untapped, I think it's an undervalued sports market. Obviously, it's a difficult one. I don't follow the NBA enough. I don't. But the owner of Houston, the Houston Rocket, wants to bring an NHL team into Houston. So we'll have to watch that space over the next 5 years to see what happens. But I don't watch enough basketball to really pass comment. I just don't watch enough. I'm far too much of a casual fan. The NRL. Okay, this is an interesting one. I think the NRL, what they need to focus on is Perth. They need to expand into Perth. Yes, you've got the PNG Hunters in the Entrust Super Cup in second grade, but I don't think you're going to get the fans, and I don't think the infrastructure is in place in Tonga, Fiji, and Samoa. I just don't think the infrastructure is there. I think if the NRL is want to be seen as a national rugby league, is what it stands for, they have to go for Perth and Adelaide. They have to either relocate a couple of teams from Sydney or grow to 18 teams. Maybe they have to put another team in New Zealand on the South Island. I don't know. It's interesting considering that Fiji and Tonga especially have really grown in the sense that they're now solid nations when it comes to international rugby league, and they do regularly well at World now. But for the NRL to be taken seriously and compete with the AFL, they have to expand into Perth and Adelaide as a minimum. Definitely Perth. I don't think they can ignore those cities any longer, because they are not a fully national rugby league then. It's the same with the Super League. They haven't expanded enough into the south of England. The NRL has been in Perth and Adelaide before, when the NRL was first set up, and then pulled out and contracted and focused solely on the Sydney, Brisbane areas. I don't know if there's enough money in Tonga, Fiji, Papua New Guinea. PNG is rugby league mad, but Tonga and Fiji also have, they're split between league and union. But PNG, yes, possibly, but it's the infrastructure. However, Perth and Adelaide have the stadiums in place. Perth definitely, I think, has the ability to have that rugby league side. They've had the Western Force in the Super Rugby, so they're crying out for another professional team at the top level in Perth. Melbourne's proved you can do it in Aussie rules country. They've got to look at Perth and Adelaide. They have to. Whether Adelaide will be right for the finance side of it, I don't know, but definitely Perth. Fastest growing city in Australia, very young city on average age, high disposable income. It's a no-brainer on a business side of it. It's a no-brainer, and people do play rugby league in Western Australia. It's a no-brainer because the AFL is killing them right now in growth of the game and taking that casual fan and going, do you want to watch AFL or do you want to watch NRL? Even the A-League has a team in Perth, so I cannot see how the NRL cannot consider a Perth team or even an Adelaide team. They have to look at that in the next couple of years when the TV deal's up. They have to. I don't think Fiji and Tonga would necessarily work. PNG, okay, they got the PNG Hunters. It is their national sport. Infrastructure is holding Papua New Guinea back, plus the temperatures. What flavour have I got in here? I've got bubblegum and cherry. I've actually got a mix of about 8 different flavours in here. I keep topping up with whatever flavour I can get my hands on. So I've got a lot of different flavours in here, and it's sort of, at the moment I think it's bubblegum. I've got a couple of flavours, and then I go to my mates and he's got about 30 different flavours, so we experiment, we come up with some really random stuff, but at the moment it's bubblegum in here. I'm actually really happy with it. I mean, I haven't had a cigarette in a week, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty happy with this. I think, yeah. When it talking about the NRL though, and I will talk about this. The NRL is one league which has a salary cap which doesn't work. The NRL salary cap is open to abuse, as we've seen with Manly Sea Eagles, Parramatta, Canterbury, Melbourne. They have all abused the salary cap. New Zealand Warriors have abused it. There's minor breaches on a regular basis by every team. It is open to abuse. They need to reform that salary cap system really quickly as well. So not only does the NRL need to expand, they also need to reform the salary cap that they have in place. Because it's not a good image for the sport when there's rules in place and teams regularly, give two fingers to it and keep doing it. That's something that I could look at again, do a video on the NRL salary cap, and is it a functioning, does the NRL salary cap actually work? Because every couple of years we have another team dragged in front of the media, dissected, and they breach the salary cap, and it's not a good image for the sport if you try and make it an even playing field. Teams regularly breaching that cap, and the issues they have with getting the cap ready for this season, it's not a good image for the sport. So that's something that the NRL needs to look at, and it's something that needs to be reformed, I think. It's the same with the AFL as well. I think, looking at what we've discussed tonight, there's a lot of things we've covered, and I'm going to go back to where I started the live stream, and that's on the cricket corruption scandal. The timing of this is interesting. The first part of this documentary that Al Jazeera put on TV about, I think, 6 to 8 months ago, came out just after the Australian ball tampering. The second half has come out as England go on the tour to Sri Lanka. Whether it's politically motivated, because Al Jazeera is owned by the Qatar royal family, and there is some geopolitics going on, I don't know. But what is interesting is the media outlets that are following this story say they do know the players that are implicated, but won't release the details of those players to the public, which says to me that there is an ongoing investigation into this, and we shall have to see what happens from it. But it does say to me that there is more to this than just a story coming out. There is a lot more to this. But cricket as a sport has issues with match fixing, and has done for the better part of 2-3 decades. Of that I have no doubt. But it raises the question of match fixing in sport, and the way that sports deal with this kind of corruption. We've seen it in other sports and the damage it's had on them, and in other leagues. Cricket seems to have this ongoing battle with match fixing, and a lot of high profile players have ended up in trouble and being accused of it. So we'll have to follow this ongoing story and see where that ends up, and see what the outcome is of any match fixing investigation, any allegation, whether it actually leads to bans and convictions and what comes out. But it's not looking great. It's not a good image for the sport either. So I don't know what can go on from that. Okay, so is there any other questions? Because I've been going now for an hour and 20 minutes. Thoughts on Stoke? Okay. Thoughts on Stoke? I get asked this a lot. I haven't really followed Stoke's progress this season, but I do know that they're not going to bounce back straight away. I have a feeling that they're going to get stuck in the Championship in the middling order. What did for Stoke was the transfer market. I think the fact that Butland and Shawcross have stayed is important. It shows they have a bit of loyalty about them, and that could be at a detriment to their international prospects. They both played for England. Butland was, trying to get the number 1 jersey, and obviously didn't. He's had a few injuries that have derailed his career somewhat. Ryan Shawcross has played a few games for England as well. I think the issue is they didn't recruit well when players left, and they rested on their laurels, and they slowly were declining over the last couple of seasons, and didn't arrest that decline. The handling of Arnautovic is a prime example of the issues that Stoke got wrong. I think Stoke will be a middling Championship side for a while. I really do. And that's not to say Stoke are a bad side. That's not to say the Championship was a bad league, but I think they didn't wake up to the fact that they were in a declining side, and that the amount of effort they put into Sadio Berahino is farcical, because he's really, really not a good player. Sadio Berahino is a wasted talent, and the amount of, I think are glad to be rid of him. I think he's really, I don't know if it's some kind of, if he's unbalancing the dressing room or causing issues in the dressing room, but it didn't work out. Hasn't really worked out for him so far at Stoke. He's barely scored a goal. I think he's only scored a couple of goals since he's been at Stoke. I think West Brom are glad that he's gone, because he was unsettling their dressing room when he was there. I think the amount of effort and energy Stoke put into getting him beggars belief. Overweight, lazy. Yes, he's exceptionally skillful, he's exceptionally talented, but his attitude is all wrong. And this comes back to a point I've made previously on players' wages. Are we paying some of these young players too much too soon? And are we paying? Oh, sorry, I was reading your comment, but are we paying some of these young players too much too soon? Because Berahino, when he was young, yes, he had undoubted talent, and it needed to be harnessed, and he was offered big money, and he took big money, and he's not the player that we expected him to be. I'm also surprised with the size of some of the stadiums in the Championship as well. Some of the size of the stadiums in some of the Championship clubs. There are some clubs in the Championship that have been in the Premier League. There's actually quite a lot of clubs in the Championship that have been in the Premier League in the past. I think Championship is a very competitive league. It's a very hard league to get out of. It's very easy to slip into, get relegated from the Premier League. It's very hard to bounce back up. It's an interesting league. I do think there are issues with the Championship. There are issues that need to be resolved with the Championship, and there are issues that are long-standing issues. It's to do with the club finances. We could go on about club finance Championship for days, if not weeks. There is an issue with club finances for Championship clubs. If you go back 2 seasons and you look at the end of the season, what clubs made over that season, finance-wise or money-wise, I think only 3 or 4 made a profit. None of them were in the promotion places, none were in the relegation places. They were all slap bang in the middle. Yeah, I've heard. I haven't looked at the FA Cup first round draw yet. I think the FA Cup has been devalued over recent seasons, because some of the bigger sides don't take it seriously. They put out second string sides. They don't put out their best 11. that they can on the day. But I do think we're going to have a surprise in the FA Cup this year, a big surprise with a team that gets to the final that we don't expect. I can see some big sides really falling flat in the third round and the fourth round. And I can see possibly a new name on that trophy. Possibly. But we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see what happens come May. Yes, there are some big stadiums in the Championship. Stoke has got one of the biggest. The Britannia. Well, I used to call it the Britannia because it was the Britannia back in the day, and now it's the Bet365, which I think is hideous. Having a company sponsoring your team is horrible. It's abhorrent. I think we have to look at betting sponsorship within sport, much like tobacco sponsorship back in the day, and go, should we ban it? But that's a debate for another day. But yes, Stoke has got a big stadium. Same with Leeds, same with Blackburn. Big stadiums, and they find them hard to fill. A lot of fans have stayed away. And this is the issue with casual fans over hardcore fans. A lot of fans only support when the team are doing well, don't support when the times get tough and walk away. That's something that I don't like about sport, and I've never liked about sport. And it is what it is with the way sport is marketed now, and all that goes with that. But having a stadium that size and not being able to fill it could be a problem. As a Blackburn fan, I know what it's like to have a half-empty stadium on. Even when we were in the Premier League, we started getting called empty Ewood when the Venky's took over. A lot of the fan morale disappeared. The running of the club has become a shambles over the last decade. We're on the way back up, but it's taken a long time as a Blackburn fan for us to go on the way back up. Stoke, I can see it taking a similar amount of time. You may miss the Premier League, but are you actually missing the Premier League ticket price? That's something to consider. There are issues with, for the most part, clubs charging too much. So we have to see, what happens long term with Stoke. I don't know enough about the Stoke situation this season to really pass comment. But having a stadium over 30,000 in the Championship, that's a big stadium. So that's a big stadium. I think a lot of clubs are told they're too big to fail. Everyone says my club is too big to get relegated. That's normally a sign you're going to get relegated. They said that about Nottingham Forest. They got relegated. Stoke got relegated. Blackburn got relegated twice. Newcastle have been relegated twice from the Premier League. So no club is too big to get relegated. If your club is mismanaged, especially off the field, it will get relegated. And we've seen it a lot in recent seasons. Clubs off the field have been badly run. So I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Man United does decline more than what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Everton again gets back into trouble. They are doing well this season, but I wouldn't be surprised. West Ham, I wouldn't be surprised if they're flirting with the drop. Man United, I don't know what's going on with, and I will finish on this because I was asked about my views on Mourinho earlier, and I'm going to finish on this because I've been going for an hour and a half now, and phone back is probably going to die soon because I'm doing this on my phone until I get a laptop sorted out. I don't know what's going on with Man United. They've failed to get many big signings, and the players don't look happy. They don't. And Mourinho's antics are just unnecessary. But I think that's my phone. It's the problem with having a phone for a live stream. When it rings. It's just annoying, and there's nothing you can do about it. I think with Mourinho and his actions at the weekend, yes, it was a reaction to the Chelsea assistant doing his thing, but Mourinho has done that before himself. It's not a club that seems to be a happy place right now, and I don't know what the future holds. But I will say this, between 67 and 92, Man United didn't win the league. Man United have been in the second division before, so it hasn't always been roses. Man United fans have got very, very used to success, and especially with the Ferguson era and the early half of the Premier League era, because they peaked at the right time and it just happened to work. But you know, it's the same with West Ham. I honestly don't know what the future holds for some of these clubs. They've banked on win now, win now, win now. When they're not winning now, it's not as good. Man United have had a very unprecedented level of success for the better part of two and a half decades, and now it's not there. No club is unrelegatable. No club is going to win every title every year. This is one of the joys of English football: is the league is more competitive than some of the leagues in Europe. And if you look at the record books, some clubs have eras of dominance and then they fade away, and some clubs regularly are at the top. Now Liverpool have regularly been at the top. They haven't won the league title for over 30 years, but they've been regularly at the top. Other clubs like Chelsea haven't. They've dipped in and out. Now Chelsea have money, they're at the top. But you just got to look at the record books. Liverpool have gone a long time without winning the league title. Man United have started to go a long time now without winning the league title. And for a better part of 30 years, they didn't win the league title, and they were actually as low as the second division at one point. So, I can't definitely say yes, they are going to get relegated, but they are declining. As a team, they are declining. Their lack of success in the transfer market in the last couple of years is starting to tell. And I think they've got the wrong guy in charge. I don't think Mourinho is the right guy to lead that club forward and to develop these players and to grow the dressing room and to grow positivity. It's gone horribly wrong. First season was the Europa League. Fine. We thought this was a turnaround after the Van Gaal and Moyes fiascos. And it wasn't. Since Ferguson has left, the team has declined rapidly. And you can tell that by the end of Ferguson's reign, he was overachieving with those players because he was a good manager. Whether you like Ferguson or not, he was a good manager because he could get the best out of players and even get better than what was expected out of them. But they have declined. I think the David Moyes experiment was the start of the decline. Van Gaal workmanlike, but even United fans would rather have Van Gaal in charge than Mourinho. I think for the most part, there are I don't know how long Mourinho's got left, but I do say this: the press and their witch hunt against him is unnecessary. The team is not playing well. We know that. Mourinho isn't the right guy to lead the club forward. But I think the witch hunt against him is just pure clickbait. It's there to get people to read their articles, and they'll go on their websites and read their newspapers and magazines. I think we'll have to see with United where they finish. We'll have to see, how long Mourinho's got left, whether he finishes out the season or not. That I couldn't tell you. Next season, we don't know what's going to happen. You say that, but you got to look at 1996. Newcastle comes second. That was their last good season. Really. Blackburn have won the Premier League. Look what they are now. No team is unrelegatable. We'll say that. Leeds were in a Champions League semi-final. Next season, relegated. So you say there's not a chance. It's highly unlikely. But I'm going by history. You look at Leeds United. 2002, Champions League semi-final, 2003, relegated out of the Premier League. So you can go from a top four club to getting relegated very quickly. Man United, however, yes, they've had a long period of stability and success, and now the success is eluding them. And I think there are some issues there. I don't think Mourinho is the right guy to lead the club forward. I don't agree with the witch hunt against him and the articles about some of his players. But at the same time, some of his players he's brought in haven't performed. Alexis Sanchez is just not doing a lot for the money he's on. And yeah, in the 70s, Man United were in the second tier. So between 67 and the late 80s, they didn't win much. Now you're saying this year. We don't know what could happen this year. I don't think they'll go down. No, they've got enough points to stay up. There are some really bad teams in the Premier League this season. You just got to look at Newcastle and Cardiff and Fulham as really bad teams this year. But I don't think United can rest on their laurels. They have to do something. They have to either really just go for broke in the transfer market this summer or in January, and they have to replace the manager because for whatever reason it's just not working. And there is a chance they could miss out on European qualification again. And they've done that a lot. I think United's chance to do something is in the FA Cup. They want to obviously get over that defeat to Derby in the League Cup. The FA Cup is a good chance for Man United to actually do something. The FA Cup final last season was a poor showing by that United side against Chelsea. Really poor, really negative. And that is sticking in the minds of a lot of football fans, especially neutrals like me who watch the game on TV. That was the worst FA Cup final I've seen. There was no energy by any of the players, and there was no drive. That was just a really poor United showing at the end of last season in the FA Cup final, and that's going to be rankling with some of those players in that dressing room. They want to win silverware. They want to be competitive. They want to be at the top. They want to be one of the best teams in England again. And right now, they're just not there. The FA Cup could be a saviour for them this season, but we shall see. We shall see. But me trying to predict anything is ludicrous. But I will say this to any football fan: no club is too big to get relegated. Ever. I think it'd be catastrophic if Man United got relegated. It really would. It would be catastrophic. But people forget that Man City weren't always in the Premier League and almost got relegated to the third tier of English football. So people forget that in the last 20-25 years, Man City were in the third division, I believe, or the old third division. So, the decline can be rapid. You've got to look at Sunderland, declining rapidly, ending up in League One. Anything could happen. You just got to look at the clubs that founded the Premier League back in 1992 and where they are now, and you'll be really surprised the fact that some of them are actually in League Two. So once you get on that slippery slope of struggling and regressing rather than progressing and developing, you can find yourself in a real dark place real quick. And the fact that Newcastle, once the second biggest club in English football, and that is to look at the mid-90s where they were on revenues and ticket sales and their value. When they finished second, they were challenging Man United. They lost, obviously, right at the end of that season. Look where they are now. They've been relegated twice from the Premier League. They've had some really bad seasons in the Premier League. They've got a man who doesn't give a toss. And there's, we shall see what happens. I do think United may miss out on automatic European qualification as well. I think that is the position they're in. And this cannot continue for much longer. Not that I'm a United fan at all, but I cannot see them long term tolerating this mediocrity. I think it would be. Of course, I want to see Blackburn back in the Premier League, but at the same time, I think it will be too far too quick. I don't think if we were to go up this season we would survive. I think we would find it very difficult. A couple more seasons in the Championship and see if we can get promotion season after next. I think would be a good target. I don't think if we were to go up to the end of the season, we would survive. I really don't. I honestly don't. I think that would be a step too far. I think that's what Cardiff are finding out. They've gone up a bit too soon. Fulham as well. I think they've gone up a bit too soon from where they were. Wolves are making good fist of it though. But I think Fulham and Cardiff might find it a bit more difficult. And looking at the teams that are aiming for promotion right now, I'm not sure any of those teams would survive if they were to go straight up at the end of this season. I'm not sure if any of the promoted sides for at the end of this season get promoted at the end of this season will be in the Premier League at the end of next season. I really don't. I think we'll get slaughtered. I honestly don't think the team are ready yet. I don't think, with how it ended in the Premier League last time, and the fact we were in League One last year, I just don't think we've got the quality of player. And I'll be honest, I think, would I be happy to see him back in the Premier League? Yeah. Would I be happy to see him back next season? No. Because that's just signing ourselves up for a hammering for 38 games. I don't think it'd be fair on the fan base, all those players that would be playing. And and with how the last decade's gone, I wouldn't know what's going on with my club anymore. I think with the way the club's been run over the last decade, it's been a shambles. I don't think if Blackburn were to get promoted at the end of this season, I think it might come a season or 2 seasons too soon. But at the same time, stranger things have happened in sport. And I will say this, look at the Vegas Golden Knights last year in the NHL as an expansion team, getting to the Stanley Cup final. So anything could happen. Of course he is. That's why there's no one else in the room. Yeah, cool. Yeah, no. I don't even play FIFA, it's a crap game, but there you go. Yeah, because there's someone ready with me. Yeah. Of course. Moron. Any more questions before I decide to call it a night? Oh, God. There's some idiots tonight in there. Players like Zaha would, probably tear the current squad we have to pieces. Absolutely. It's basically a League One / Championship squad that I think are overachieving this season. In all honesty, I honestly believe that. I honestly believe the team we've got now, I think the goal was to survive this season. I think we're doing more than that. I think we're overachieving. And if we were to get promoted, I think we would not be ready. But strange things have happened. And I'm not saying that they won't get promoted and they won't survive, but I would think it'd be highly unlikely to have any long-term success in the Premier League if they were to go and get promoted now. I really do. But at the end of the day, anything can happen. We've seen strange things happen. We've seen some true underdog stories in over the years. So I'm not against them getting promoted, but I would find it. I would assume it'd be exceptionally difficult. I don't think they would have enough to stay up. But that's me being a realist rather than an optimist. If I was being an optimist, I'd say, yeah, we can go up and we can. Blackpool's another story of a mismanaged club, and there's issues with fan protests and a lot of negativity around a team like Blackpool. The Oyston family are not very popular. They're very negative, held in a very negative light by the fan base. And the issues with Blackpool and the ownership are there for all to see. They're not the only club with ownership issues and problems off the field. There's a host of non-league and football league clubs that have issues off the field. Absolute host. Van Aanholt, decent player. I think the Dutch are in a rebuild phase as a footballing nation. They obviously missed out on the World Cup. and they had to go back to the drawing board with how they developed players and where they're going. But they did beat Germany 3-0 in the Nations League the other day, and that's a positive. But bear in mind, this Germany side isn't playing well at the moment. Cool. And we have another idiot. I think Van Aanholt's a decent player. But because I don't watch football as religiously as I did 5-10 years ago, I think I don't watch enough football to really make an honest opinion on every single player. I will follow the odd club and I will catch the odd game. It's not. You know. Messi. No, I have seen a lot of Messi's play, and when football was free to air in this country for European football, you could catch the Champions League, Europa League, and international games on the TV for free. Yes, Messi is one of those players who is a generational talent. He is generational talent. He just underperforms at international level, and that is, he hasn't had the success at international level he's had at Barcelona. On the cricket side of things, Ibarra, decent. I think he's again one of those super talented players who could have a glittering career ahead of him. On the cricket side of things, I followed the Test series this summer with great interest, England and India, and the England-Pakistan series as well. What's come out, obviously, meet and greets. It all depends on a variety of things, and obviously interest is one of them. So if people are willing to meet up and discuss sport things, then I'm more than happy to do that. But obviously it's geographical, so I'm limited by how far I can go and how far I can travel, and that is a limitation. I have bumped into the odd subscriber here or there. I have met the odd subscriber here or there just by pure accident. Oh God, go away. There is no one sat here with me, so there is no one sat here with me, it is just me. So that person who keeps making up accounts to piss me off is getting blocked all the time. Yeah, I'm more than happy to meet people. I regularly watch Bracknell Bees games, so if you're an ice hockey fan, you will catch me down there, round about the ice rink. I'm more than happy to discuss things, any sport really. I could sit in a pub, literally sit in a pub or a cafe, just sit down, have a cup of coffee or a pint, and literally just sit there and talk football, rugby. I can't skate to save my life. Yes, I do have viewers in Scotland. I have been invited up to Scotland. I don't do shisha, so you're out on that one. At the end of the day, I'm happy just to sit down and have a cup of coffee or a pint, or have a five-a-side kick about and talk sport. It's plain and simple. There are some sports that I like more than others, and I'll happily, sit down and discuss sports history and yeah. But I'm trying to quit smoking, and shisha just isn't my thing. It's just not my thing. It's never been my thing really. I just prefer this. Yes, I am on the Rangers guy on Xbox. He's on my friends list. Message him and you can find me. It's not hard. But yeah, I'm more than happy to have like a five-a-side kick about, go to a game. As I say, I bumped into the odd subscriber at ice hockey matches, and you can't even spell my name, you moron. So you're not with me. I don't really do the cinema either, to be honest. I'll wait for things to come out on DVD. Plain and simple. But no, it's been interesting discussing sports with people, because I've met subscribers. I've met subscribers down the pub. I've met them down the ice rink. I've got a few of my friends subscribe to the channel, and they regularly ask me how it's doing, what's going on, how big is it now, and things like that. It's a good hobby to have. It's a good hobby to have, and now that my shoulder's busted, I don't know how long I'm going to be struggling with this dodgy shoulder, if I'm honest. Could be a long-term thing, it could be a short-term thing. We'll have to find out in a couple of weeks what the situation is. But there's definitely some nerve damage, and there could be some internal structural issues with my shoulder. I don't bench press. I used to, I don't now. And I haven't been on the gym in years. My mate used to have his own little home gym, and used to pump a bit of iron, and he was applying for the army at the time, so I was helping him with his training and stuff. I did a bit of sparring with a couple of mates in kickboxing, but I haven't really done anything like that for a good 4 or 5 years now. Last time I benched, I think I benched about 80 kilos, so not a lot. I'm not a big guy actually. I'm surprisingly not as big as you think. People think I'm a lot bulkier than I actually am, and they actually meet me in person. I'm not as big as people think. Selhurst Park is a way for me to get to, and that's something that needs to be organised a bit more in depth. So get me on Xbox Live. We'll have a chat on the Xbox Live, and we'll sort something out. And I'm more than happy to have a discussion, about Palace, if you want to discuss Crystal Palace and some of the good players you've had and some of the not so good players you've had. And Palace have now established themselves as a solid mid-table side. No, I've only got Xbox. I've only got an Xbox One, which is that. I haven't got a PS4. Fishing. Now, a lot of my mates do fishing. And they find it, in a sense, therapeutic. That's the word. Palace, they're just a solid mid-table side. They used to be a yo-yo side. Used to get promoted, relegated. They've had some off-field issues in the past. They do need to invest in growing that squad a little bit. I think they could do something in the FA Cup this year. I do think they could do something in the FA Cup this year and have a good cup run. I think they could surprise some people. I think there's a few clubs that might take the FA Cup a bit more seriously this year than in previous years. I blocked him. He was a pain in the arse. But it is what it is. Right, I've been going for nearly 2 hours now. I'm going to call it a day, I think. Some interesting questions, some interesting topics. Hopefully, blocked him as well. Just trolls. They're just trolls. So, and they're the same person, so I think I know who it is. I don't live stream every day. I do it every now and then. I haven't done it as much lately. We've had a few technical issues with my laptop breaking itself, deciding to uninstall stuff. I could possibly do a live stream tomorrow. It depends on what I'm doing. It depends on a few things, but also I'll have a look, see what I'm doing tomorrow. I've got a few things to do in the day. I'll sort out a few bits and pieces. and oh no, they're staying blocked. They are staying blocked. Oh god, Pat Francis, none twat. But it is what it is. Like, yeah. But I'm happy to live stream. I'm happy. It all depends on what I'm doing and the availability that I have. And I'll also, keep some tabs on some of the sports stories that are going on. We know that Mourinho, obviously, has been charged by the FA for improper conduct for the comments he made before the international break. We know that Man United had been fined for their late arrival in the Champions League. So there's some sports stories going on. Well, yeah, stadium redevelopment is a tricky one. We've seen some clubs do it well. We've seen some clubs do it really, really badly. Tottenham have done it badly. Man United did Old Trafford very, very well. They kept it open whilst expanding stand by stand. Oldham have made a hash of their stadium. So if you want to see a stadium that's half demolished, look at Oldham. Stadium redevelopment is a tricky one. Some clubs, as I say, did it very, very well, like Arsenal. They built the Emirates while still at Highbury. So when the Emirates was completed, they moved over. West Ham decided to go for the rental route. They decided that stadium became vacant in the London Olympic Stadium, and they rented it, and that's not going so well. Other clubs have developed in situ, stand by stand, while they're still playing there. So the stadium is still available to be used, such as Liverpool and Man United. And other teams have gone for a full rebuild, like Tottenham, and have made a complete pig zoo of it. So stadium redevelopment is one of those that is a tricky subject and needs to be done right. It's very, very difficult to get it right, and it can be an expensive mess. And as we've seen with Tottenham, it can be a very expensive mess. And we don't know how long White Hart Lane's going to be held back and delayed. It's already 2 months late. They say about March as an estimate. It's not going well. So if you're thinking about a stadium redevelopment, and if they are planning to go ahead, they've got to be a bit careful about how they do it. Some clubs have done quite well with redeveloping stadiums. Other clubs haven't done so well and have had issues. So that's an interesting point, and I'll have a look at Scunthorpe, and if they do decide to go down a stadium redevelopment route, how well that goes, and if they decide to go ahead with it. Redevelopments are expensive. But normally it's the sign of a club that wants to move forward and go upwards and grow. So that could be a positive sign, but it could have its negatives attached. Alan Shearer, yes, legend of my club, great player. No, I don't have the NBA. I was actually watching some idiots write some stuff. I don't have the NBA game. I don't. Not a big fan of basketball. I'm just not a big fan of basketball. The NBA is not a league. I'll casually watch basketball. I answered that earlier in the live stream. I don't have it on Xbox. I don't have any sports games on Xbox. It's just not my It's just not my cup of tea, really. I've gone off the sports games, and it's not something I enjoy. I'm not saying that sports games are bad. It's just not my cup of tea anymore. If I'm going to play something, it'll be something like Assassin's Creed. It will be something like GTA. It will be something like Red Dead Redemption. It will be something like Call of Duty. It'll be something that isn't a sports game, basically. But no, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is what I've got. I've got the latest one. I've done a review on the other channel. It's an interesting game. I'm going to say that. I think with Hearts still being top of the table, that's an added spanner in the works for the old firm. I think Scottish football does have some issues this season. I think Gerrard's had a positive effect, and I will say this: the Gerrard effect has been positive. With Rangers, the off-field issues with Rangers are what could hold them back. Celtic, Brendan Rodgers now come out and said they didn't do the transfer window right. He's actually come out and admitted, yeah, we screwed that up. And Celtic, they've got the wheels turning now, but you know, I think it's an open-ended one. That one, I think Hearts are showing that they can win ugly, and they can grind out results. Yes, they lost to Rangers 3-1, but at the same time, that was just 20-30 minutes of madness. And so that's an interesting one. But I do think we'll have to see what happens for the rest of the season, Scott. And that is something that I have been following somewhat. It's a bit more competitive this season than in previous seasons. I think having Hearts at the top is good for the game in Scotland. And I'll have to see what goes on from there. Right, okay. I'm calling this a night. Thank you very much for all your questions. There's been some really interesting topics we've discussed. There's been a couple of trolls, as standard, because you just can't you just can't do a live stream now without someone ruining it. Yeah, I'm gonna call it a night. Thanks for all the questions. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have the laptop fixed. We're gonna try and sort that out in the morning. You know, we've had some issues obviously with tech the last couple of weeks, which has been a bit of a pain in the arse. So hopefully we're getting that. We'll get that sorted. But yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.